today, it's, on the forefront of all of our minds, right? This coronavirus, and especially how do we talk to our kids about it? And I brought in an expert today to really shed some light on how we can make this an easier time for our kids and ourselves too, to get through this together. So I'm going to be bringing on Dr. Nerissa Bauer. She is a behavioral pediatrician with Axon Health and Associates, and she is a blogger of her own site too, called letstalkkidshealth.org. And in her career, she has specialized in behavioral concerns from preschoolers to preteens, and she's taught the Incredible Years program at Riley Hospital for national conferences, and is really been talking to a lot of her own patients these days too, in terms of how to talk to your kids about the coronavirus. So welcome, Dr. Nerissa Bauer. Welcome to our Facebook Live here. There we go. So let's first start off with discussing, especially those people who have young children. This has to be a really delicate time in terms of, how much we're sharing with them, how to really talk to them about this subject that is rather dark, so that they don't get too scared, right, or too depressed. Is that even one of the number one things a lot of the parents are coming to you about?
Yeah, it's a tricky topic because you want to make sure that your kids are aware so that they're doing the proper things like hand washing and making sure that they stay well and stay away from folks. But you also don't want to give them too much information, which could be really overwhelming, especially for the younger kids who might not understand the nuances of germs and all of that. So making sure to have a child-friendly conversation about the coronavirus, because obviously there's so many changes happening where we're all constantly spending time with each other, and school is still in session, but now school is at home, but also work is at home, and how to juggle all that together as a family is going to be an important topic.
It is. So you even mentioned too that it's a delicate topic. So what are some things that we could say to our kids?
Mm-hmm. So thinking about the younger kids in general, having that discussion, first of all, of why we're all home. I think and really focusing on the fact of how that's going to start impacting them day to day. So first of all, you want to explain the reason. So, the reason that we're all home is because there is a new illness going around in our community and in the country that the scientists and doctors are still learning much about. But we know that in effort to do what we need to do to make sure as many people stay well is that we need to practice what's called social distancing. For the younger kids, you might want to actually tell them what that means. That means no play dates, no sleepovers, no birthday parties, no going to school, because they can understand that. And then explain.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and I think we're beginning to get used to that idea, but I'm telling you, the first couple of weeks, it was hard, right? I mean, I know I have to admit, the very first weekend the kids were out of school, my kids had kids over, and it was playing videos together, and it was like, oh, this would be kind of fun. We'll just enjoy this all together. And things have certainly changed. So, maybe they're not complaining as much or whining as much. Why can't I have so-and-so over? But as we progress into this, I think kids are getting a little lonely. So how do we still tell them that it's important to just not be around each other?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is sort of continuing to touch base with them and doing a mood check, because, this is a new normal for all of us, having to sort of not be social with people that we normally want to see with and hang out with. I think you're right. The first week or so, kids were just getting used to this. We were all just defining, what does this mean? And still maybe allowing some of our kids to get together, thinking that, oh, it might be okay. But when it became clear that, we really need to take social distancing very seriously, because it is the one public health strategy we have to do what we need to do to flatten the curve, so to speak. And so making sure to just have those touch-ins with your children, and reminding them the reason. They're going to be whiny and complain about it, especially now that we just learned today that the Indiana schools are going to be closed for the remainder of the school year.
As probably a lot of places across the nation.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
read that Indiana was the 11th state so far to close school for the rest of the school year. So there's going to be a lot of disappointment out there, because school not only represents sort of going to school and doing what you have to do, but it's a very social setting for our kids.
And you're still seeing patients through Zoom, I would imagine, in other ways, right? So what are a lot of the things, and you primarily talk to parents or even the kids together about behavioral concerns?
Yeah, it depends. So the majority of the time it's with, at some point, the kids join the parents during the visit, but I do still see patients, new and return patients in my practice, to discuss kind of what's been happening since I've last seen them, and to monitor sort of overall parenting concerns.
So you're talking more to the kids then, or more to the parent?
Well, to the parents primarily first, just to kind of check in and see how things are going, how their child is functioning at home, how they're balancing e-learning, and how the family is doing as a unit. And then I'll talk to the child as well.
So is there a question that comes to mind that most of them even seem to ask you, or the biggest concerns too, maybe that the young kids are having?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the concerns that I've had in the past couple weeks has been more along the lines of, e-learning and balancing that, how to balance getting them through the school day, so to speak, which ends up being only 1 or 2 hours compared to the normal work day that the parent has, right? How to balance that. And then how to, just check in with their child about the uncertainty, because not only are the kids feeling anxious at times, but of course we are too as parents, because of that uncertainty of whether or not they can keep their paycheck, or if they're going to have to go into the hospital, or if there's a extended family member in another part of the country who's now fallen sick. I mean, we have so many anxieties and questions happening in our day-to-day lives, and a lot of those kids feel that.
I know, you're right. It's so many things, right? It's not just us tackling e-learning with them or not being able to have a play date, but also we're all around each other many, many more hours during the day, to even getting the homework. I know, getting that done. I know that I haven't even personally been able to help my kids very much. So how do you find other families even dealing with that? Are they doing a lot of online tutoring? Are they just muddling through it? Do you think, especially now for a lot of schools nationwide, not going back to school the rest of the year, if they're concerned about just grades really going haywire at this point?
Yeah, it's been a challenge. I think I've seen the whole gamut. Where some families, one of the family members was actually a teacher and has that ability to sort of just keep that hat on. Whereas other families, just because of the demands of their jobs, it's been really tough sort of balancing doing that, but continuing to be parent, and then now putting on the third hat of being a teacher or tutor to their child. So, every family is unique and different. But we're all just trying to survive. I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen has been for my families that have had educational accommodations in place while school was in session, and then all of a sudden trying to figure out, well, usually my child meets with an aide, or they had other accommodations, and now those went away, or how do we implement that? Because learning still has to be done. So those have been additional ongoing questions that we've had to talk through.
Do you give parents tools to, like, certain questions to check in with their kids and ask them? I mean, is it something beyond just, how are you feeling? what's going on? Or what do you think about that? Is it better to keep the conversation open? Or is it better to maybe just not broach the topic and try to just do other things?
Yeah, so I vote for kind of an approach down the middle. I think not talking about it or bringing it up sort of can alienate some children who really want to talk about it, but make it seem like you don't want to. Whereas, talking about it all the time can also be anxiety provoking too. So I think,
Yeah.
sort of doing like a morning huddle, when you're getting ready for the day and sitting down for your breakfast, your coffee, and just checking, the e-learning kind of activities for the day. Parents are running through their meeting lists and just sharing like what's on what's on the docket today, what's important to you that you can't miss. What are some of the things that you are seeing that the teacher's sending you that you might need help on? Let's talk about that and strategize, like where in the day that I can kind of be there for you. But
I
just
like how
having
you
that
named
morning
that.
huddle.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I was just going to say, I love the morning huddle name. Yeah. Or probably even setting up something special now that you do together. I would say one silver lining out of this is I'm finding that we're doing more together as a family, where, before we were so rushed with all the activities going on after school and school itself, and not really getting hardly a chance to just have dinner together. Where I know one thing we implemented is since this started, every night we've been watching a movie together.
Yeah.
Where we just, never had time for something like that before. I do see some of you on here too. So thanks, Kurt Humphrey, for watching, or maybe that's you, Charity, Ellie, and Jane, Jackson, and Diana, and Nee. So if you guys have questions too while you're on here, feel free to go ahead and leave us a comment, and you can certainly ask Dr. Nerissa Bauer a question while we're chatting here about how you still can talk to your kids about the coronavirus.
And I love that, Sheryl, what you said about like finding time now to actually spend as a family. I feel like this shelter in place order has given a lot of families sort of anxiety and overwhelm, but also that opportunity to self-reflect and pause a little bit, because you're
Yeah.
right, we're no longer as busy as we used to be, and now we're having to be creative and come up with different ways to fill that time. So I'm trying to talk with my families about, really grabbing onto that. We may be in this position for a few more weeks, couple more months, but you're not going to get that time back. And I think it's really helpful that way to just kind of tune in to each other.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, we can look at this as really precious time. Precious time that, it's an exchange for kids missing out, I know, on a lot of activities and sports and proms and graduation. So I guess to maybe help fill that void a bit is just to do more things together. I talked with my daughter about, we're going to go for a bike ride later on today. And I know that, it's not as exciting than a lot of the other things I get to do, but I guess it's just a time to be creative. About outlets and using this time as a resource. So some people are saying they didn't know we're actually live. Yes, we are live. So we're talking on here right now. So yeah, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in there, and likes or hearts or anything like that too.
One thing that I will say that I've seen that other families have done, and I wish I had started from day one, is chronicling kind of what they did for the day. I mean, even the mundane stuff, and taking pictures, because then at the end of that, you can have, a memory book of this. I mean, now you're living it and you're like, oh my gosh, when will this end? But it really would, hopefully in the future, we can look back at this time and look at kind of all those fun things that we did in different and creative ways to connect with each other.
And I would imagine a hard issue for all of us is that, when it first started, we thought, okay, it'll be a week. All right, it's going to be 2 weeks. But now it just seems like it's turning into 3 and maybe 2 months. I mean, it's the unforeseen, right? And we still don't know, we don't have that light at the end of the tunnel yet. So how does that, because you also especially work with children, behavioral issues, I would imagine anxiety prone people, how do we talk some of them through this?
Yeah. So first of all, I think the biggest thing is to let your child's questions guide how in depth you go. You don't want to necessarily pile on too much information before they're ready to process it. So I always sort of start where they are, and the easiest way to do that is, maybe even starting with like, what have you heard about the coronavirus? What have you heard from other teachers or friends or other family members? because then that gives you the chance to correct any misinformation and then
Mhm.
make sure that they have the facts, because you're the trusted resource. They should be getting their factual information from you. And so starting there, and then sort of having just a very clear, concrete uh, discussion of what this
Mhm.
means day to day for us as a family. We're gonna have some good days, and we're gonna have not so good days,
Yeah.
just because we're gonna get into each other's hair a lot, and there are gonna be times that we're gonna not want to be together, but you know we just have to remember to forgive each other and to talk and make sure that we make time to check in and talk with each other. Don't be
Mhm.
afraid to tell me what you need, because I might not know unless you just tell me. And
Yeah.
having those open lines of communication.
Those are great points. And also, we have some more people who chimed in here. Amy Barnes, hi. Glad to see you
Hello.
here. And Lorraine Vavel. And Lorraine even has a question.
Uh-huh.
She asked, and you read our minds, Lorraine. We were talking about young kids and we're getting to the older. So Lorraine wants to know, too, how we handle an older teenager doing the teen things of rebellion and social distancing from family and dealing with, says there's more, there we go, and dealing with those crazy teen hormones. Yeah, so teens especially, I mean, they probably do feel like they're missing out on, a lot, and they are. And it really, it stinks at this time in their life. And who knew? None of us have had to go through this before. And I can only imagine when you really feel like, that's your world, is your social life and your school activities. So how have you talked with some families about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, first acknowledging the fact that they're disappointed, they're frustrated, they're sad, There's so many things now that we just found out, again, the schools are closed until the end of the school year. That means no proms, no graduations,
Yeah.
none of that. That sort of those milestones that you look for, right? So you want to first of all acknowledge those feelings, say, I know you're really upset. I'm upset too. I was looking forward to it. And then just inviting them to share kind of their thoughts and feelings. That doesn't mean that they're going to be able to go out with their friends until it's safe to, only until it's safe to do so.
Hmm.
But they should have the ability to sort of air their feelings with you in a safe space, right?
Yeah, right. And Lorraine even mentioned it too, missing prom. I know that's a
Oh,
huge deal. I especially feel for the seniors.
yeah.
It's really a tough time. Seniors in high school, seniors in college. I have an intern, a team member working with Successful Women Made Here with us right now. It's her senior year at
Yeah.
Butler, and I know it's disappointing, but I guess like I said, the silver lining is hopefully we become closer in other ways or then we also just get creative, or now we have the time to almost reflect and think of, okay, what can I do? What would I like to do?
Hmm. I mean, I'm
Right?
sure there are lots of creative people out there on social media. Maybe they might even post their prom dresses and still kind of have a virtual get together,
Yeah.
somehow. But I know it doesn't replace the in-person experience at all. But again, sort of just talking through that, it's not worth it to risk um, any of our lives by
Hmm.
congregating and still trying to move ahead with those types of things, even with just a small group of friends. Because again, with this virus, you can be asymptomatic and not have any symptoms, but still be able to transmit the virus to other people who are more vulnerable. And so that is going to be the important discussion point that you have with your teams. I know it stinks. It sucks. Like, I know you want to do this, but we cannot do this right now. And this is
Yeah.
why.
What are some coping mechanisms that you
Yeah.
recommend?
Yeah. I mean, I think, having your kids be able to, first of all, just talk about their feelings. If it's not with you, then with friends or with someone else, like a
Like you?
trusted adult. Yeah, or
Yeah.
me, or there's therapists as well. So, I mean, I think that there are resources out there like that. But then also like getting outside, connecting virtually, keeping up those connections in other ways. Focusing on what you can do, and then maybe even as a family doing like a gratitude journal, kindness, acts of kindness,
Mhm.
for other people that you care for. Again, it doesn't, it's not a, it doesn't replace the fact that you're missing out on one of the huge milestones of your life, you know, like prom or something, but trying to keep in context that the reason, what the reason, why that is, and then trying your best to kind of shift that mindset. It's not easy. It's not
Mhm.
easy, but you know, celebrating what we can do. I think that's another thing that I see with kids with anxiety. Sometimes they get stuck on the what ifs in
Yeah,
a lot. You know, like what if you get it, or what if grandma gets it, or what if, you know, so and so gets it. I mean, it can be really stressful and overwhelming, especially as this goes on and the numbers continue to climb. I bet that we're all going to know either someone who has a positive test or who may have bad outcomes
right.
related to it, if not immediately, you know, somewhere else.
Sure.
And so I think it's going to be really important to just keep those lines of communications open as we process these things that are happening day to day.
Yeah, I agree. I think talking about it, but as you mentioned earlier, allowing your kids to kind of be the guide as far as how far they want
Mm-hmm.
to continue talking about it. And I think there's ways too to not inundate with going too dark. I mean, I find myself also wanting to turn on the news, but almost having to put a time limit on
Oh,
myself.
for
So if
sure.
because I like the morning show, so I'll turn it on, but I've always told myself like no more than 20 minutes because otherwise, I won't want to get out of bed. And I'm sure if kids hear too much of that too, they'll just think the world's coming to an end. So
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I don't know if that works or what. Yeah, but for some people, I almost think we need to. It's kind of like 9/11, though. We all wanted it. We were glued to our TVs, but I think some of the difference was, as horrible and unfortunate that was, it seemed to. We were glued to it for a while, but this could go on for quite a while. So I think,
yeah.
yeah. So we don't get too much in despair.
Right. I mean, I think
To
one thing that you mentioned, Cheryl, I think is important is mindfulness, is just sort of being mindful of how we're feeling at any one point in time. Because if you're scrolling through social media or you're watching the news and you're hearing like, you know, negative news after negative news, it can really start, you know, causing us, we're feeling it.
Mhm.
And if you're feeling it, it's chances are your children will feel it as well, you know?
Yeah.
And so making sure to put time limits. If you're starting to feel yourself get depressed or overwhelmed, turn it off. I mean, I often tell families to make sure that background TV, like there's no reason to have it on all the time
Mhm.
or like NPR on all the time. I mean, I love NPR, but like you don't want to keep listening to kind of the
All
possibility of
the
all
doom
this
and gloom.
tragedy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you've got to put time limit on social media use and all of that just to connect.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems to be, a matter of what can we control, right?
Yep.
What are we most in control of? Well, we can make sure we wash our hands, like they said, keeping our distance. But other than that, life goes on. And I do like the idea of just looking at what can we do to value this time, because we will say 1 year from now, 5 years from now, oh, remember when that happened, and think back. And so what could be the memory that we associate with that? And I would hope that it's a memory of, gosh, we really got to do all these things together, or I learned all this about my child, or my child learned all this about me that we wouldn't have had the time to talk about otherwise.
Right.
So I know, like, when we're having our movie night every night, and we've been watching, I mean, we've watched all the Star Wars ones now. We started with that. But then I've been letting the kids kind of pick out some of the ones that we have in our movie bin that we keep saying we're going to get rid of. And it's like, okay, let's watch them and then we'll get rid of them. But it's been really interesting because, like, my son picked The Butler the other night, and it was a really good example to just talk about a lot of history. And then they both learned a lot of things they didn't realize about equal rights and slavery and such. So to just, I guess, use these times as a time that we could really, hopefully of those who have kids that are still in the house, or kids who weren't in the house and now they're back,
Yes.
to just, I think once again, I mean, I kind of look at it as a positive. Wow, I get to actually input them into them and have more access to them than maybe I have in a long time.
For sure.
So what have some of the parents also asked you, when this ends or begins to subside, what does that look like? Are they even fearing that? And in terms of like, well, some anxiety about like, I don't know if I can still now go up and hug somebody or shake their hand, or, I mean, we're going to start with this new normal even after the fact, and what that looks like. Have a lot of people even been bringing that up to you yet?
Not yet. I mean, I think I've had some families that are proactively thinking about that. And like, for instance, in the context of a child who has anxiety and social anxiety at school, now that they're not in school, they're doing well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they were thinking ahead, and they're like, well, what if when we're able to go back to school, how is that going to go? Because now their child is used to staying at home, which is what we normally would tell parents with children who have anxiety, to avoid school avoidance, right? I mean, don't pull your child out of school just because they're anxious about it, because that's the worst thing you can do, right? But now that we've all been forced to do that, what's that, the reacclimation to school going to look like? It's going to be bumpy, I'm sure. And then as we get to, when we learn more about, once we've gotten over this hump, how do we restart, doing our social interactions with each other? When is that safe to do so? I think we just have to kind of get our guidance from the CDC and the World Health Organization as to how to do that in a responsible way.
Yeah. And thanks also, Kim Thompson has joined us, and Brooke Winings. So let us know if you have any questions. Anyone else on the here on the chat with us?
Another coping strategy would be like art and journaling, also yoga. That's also a nice one. Meditation, progressive muscle relaxation is another skill that I often teach kids when I see them.
Oh, what is that?
So that's where you sort of tense different muscle sets, like your hands, squeeze it tight, count to 5, and then relax.
Oh, so okay. Let me try that.
Yeah. Because when we get anxious or worried, our bodies naturally tense up, and nobody likes how that feels. And so teaching kids who tense up to learn to recognize when their body is tense, and then learning how to relax. And then you can actually do that like as you're laying down. And if you want to begin the process of relaxation, you can do a body scan and then start to do that progressive muscle relaxation, starting with your forehead, then your eyes, then your mouth, then your shoulders, arms, hands, stomach, legs, feet.
So tightening those up too as you work your way down?
Yep.
Can we see an example what that looks like? Like how do you tighten your eyes?
Well, so you squinch them up like this, really tight, count to 5, and then sort of just relax. But again, as you move through your body, you sort of kind of tense and release and relax those muscles. And over time, actually, the kids really like it because it's something they can control. And it's a nice exercise as they're trying to calm themselves and get ready for bed. Something they can do without a lot of effort.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. All right. Any other advice on the fears and concerns of kids? What, from their viewpoint, what are some questions that they have tended to ask you in terms of, is it mainly they fear that, mom or dad all of a sudden may,
or if they're going to get sick? Yeah. Not being able to see friends or family. I think that's a huge one all the time that I hear about too. And, I think the biggest thing as parents, I think these fears can ebb and flow. So once you have the discussion about the coronavirus, just knowing that, again, that's why the morning huddle or just a mood check is really important, because on any given day, we can have good and bad days, right? You don't want to necessarily keep pushing it at them, but allowing them the ability to just ask their question or share their feelings when they need to. But I think it's going to be important, just like I said, to just kind of make sure that you're ready to have that conversation whenever the child is ready, and as often as you need to.
Yeah. And I think you touched on some really important things. Well, one, I love the mood check that you mentioned. We should all have a mood check with one another, the morning huddle. And also just knowing that it's not that we can get rid of the fear, right? It's being able to name the fear or just discuss it. And it's not that even always that fear is the enemy, because fear can actually inspire us to, have energy and take action, but it's more the paralysis of fear.
Right.
So, and that's when people don't want to get out of bed or just think like, well, is any of this worth it? Or I'm not going to have any customers anyway, right? I might as well just throw in the towel. So it's I think, watching out for that paralysis of fear.
Yeah.
And that there are still lots of things that we can control. We can't control right now the virus and what it's doing, other than we stay home as much as we can, if that's possible, limit our interactions, wash the hands, steer clear. But other than that, it's almost like just knowing that we actually can take a lot of action, and we do have a lot of control still over our lives for others. So, and Amy Jo is watching. Hi, Michelle Cardamon. Hello. Michelle says she loves the idea of the mood check too.
Oh.
Good. And Michelle's been a nurse. If you have questions too, Michelle, in regards to things like that. Brooke wants to know if you have a good yoga program that you would recommend for parents and preteen kids to do together.
Oh.
Is there? So you do yoga. You do all kind. You're probably missing your bar. I used to see you all the time at
Although
Pure
they
Bar.
have started, they offer online classes and through their closed Facebook group. So that's been a lot of fun. So shout out to all those, those types of businesses that have adapted to this, right? Because that's really important too for our own mental health, is to try to do as much of that physical activity, whether that be solo and your own practice and or involving the kids, right? I think that's a nice new way to sort of figure out how to involve the kids in what you do. So
that's a great tip. Yeah, definitely on that. I think now, again, just bringing us back together closer. Yeah. I guess I'm going for a bike ride today with my daughter after this is done. When it was warmer over the weekend, we actually were getting out and walking 2 miles together. And you know what? We hadn't done that
in a long time, right? I mean, it's because we're so busy. Yeah. So getting back to your question, like Cosmic Kids Online, my colleagues and friends at Mini Minds, I know that I used to refer a lot of families over there for their yoga classes. I think they're also in the midst of trying to figure out if they can do something online too. But yeah, I think even Beachbody on Demand, they have like yoga classes too. So you can just invite your child to do that. There's a lot of children's books on yoga that I love, like Sleepy Time Yoga, and pulling out some of those, you can pull out any sort of children's book and then imitate some of those animals too. I mean, for kids, especially, for kids yoga, you've got to have more fun. It's not necessarily the posture and, the getting it right kind of, but it's just engaging them in acting out those different animals and how to stretch your body in different ways. And so that's where kids yoga is a lot different from yoga practice for adults.
Yeah,
but it's still fun
for all of us. Exactly. Yes. And stretching is always good.
Yeah.
So, and we can put a lot of those links afterward. We'll put them in the chat so that people can find a lot of those that you're talking about in general. So, and hi, Melissa Schott, she's watching. Hi. So yeah, we're still live. So if anybody wants to put your question in there.
And I will say that some of my newsletters for my blog readers, like this past week, I had sent out one on some ideas for children, how to keep children busy. And so this coming week edition is going to be focused on some things that I'm putting together for parents to stay sane.
Okay, can you just tell us that now? Yeah, I put up this picture. It was a week ago or so of this, which I had shared from Kara, who's a friend of mine, her post.
Yeah.
And it was funny. It had showed that this lady said, "Oh, this is Sue. And she's 1 week into homeschooling her kids." And then you saw a picture of a woman who looked like she was 90,
Oh
you know.
no.
But so any tips for how we adults too can stay sane?
Yeah, well, so yeah, for sure. I mean, like actually when I started putting these series together, I've been reaching out to my small business owner friends to see if I could put in plugs for them and their business as well. So that's what I'm going to be including in this edition. So I have a friend who just released a hypnotherapy digital course that I'm going to be putting a
Nice.
link to, so that way you can learn how to sort of be mindful and take control of your own anxieties, which I think is really important as a parent, especially because kids can feel that tension or that overwhelm. So if you can model appropriate anxiety reducing techniques and do that for yourself, it's going to pay off for you and your kids as well.
That's so true. And if to just touch on that aspect, you're right.
Sure.
It starts with us, right? And if as the ship, the mother of the ship or the father of the ship, I do think it really stems from us, our mindset, our being kind to one another, being understanding, not coming across as too fearful or angry, right? To just, this is a time for us also to just kind of take a deep breath and do what we need to do. As far as those classes go and such.
Because I will say, I think it's going to be important. That's one of the parenting principles called role modeling that we have. Kids are like sponges. They will pick up on the good, the bad, and everything in between, that we say or do and how we act, our mannerisms. But to recognize that, even though that can be such a burden to families or parents thinking, oh my gosh, like I have to be on my best behavior 24/7. No, I mean, we're human, right? And so, but not being afraid to go back if you do lose your temper or you do like sort of freak out. And then after you've processed that, going back to your kids and saying, I probably could have handled that better or a different way, and explaining that, because that's where the learning happens. Showing that self-compassion to yourself too, because you want your kids to be able to do that as well for themselves.
That's a good point. Not to be too hard on ourselves, and some good lessons in there to show them that we all make mistakes. I see Christina is watching too. Hi, Christina. And Michael in LA. Hope you're doing well. Wow. So if any of you have questions, we'll be on here probably another 5 minutes or so. If you want to put your questions there in the chat.
I was also going to share, like on my newsletter for this week, was some of my favorite Instapot recipes that I've been using now too. I mean, I'm not a traditional lifestyle blogger. I'm more, kind of focused on parenting. But I thought, some of the things that I'm using to get through, I was going to just kind of include in this newsletter too, like some of my favorite recipes or things that are kid tested and approved, sort of things that I'm doing too. And I always love to hear back from my readers too, as far as other activities or tips and tricks that they're doing to stay sane. I think we can learn from everybody. That's one of the reasons I called my blog Let's Talk Kids Health. And if you've taken one of my parenting classes, the let's command is a tricky one, because we often tell parents not to use the let's command, especially with preschoolers, because when we use that, we oftentimes want them to do something rather than us being involved. But in this case, it's sort of a play on words, because I really want everybody to talk about kids' health in a positive way. So this blog is intended for not just parents, but educators and grandparents and other physicians who need the resources. I want everybody who's interested in overall kid wellness to see this as a resource.
Yeah, well, they're the future. Yeah, and you have lots of topics on there on your blog. What are some other things that you've addressed?
So depression, ADHD is a big one. So I also have developed a program called the Teach program. And so that has a parent curriculum and a child curriculum, and how to onboard them both to what ADHD is. So I spent I've had a lot of work in that area. anxiety, parenting concerns, advocacy concerns. Yeah, you name it. I have it on there, especially when it comes to development and behavior. That's kind of the focus.
Yeah. Are you seeing more people actually being depressed coming to you, or is it more anxiety?
It's kind of I mean, I think at this point in time,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think anxiety is still very prevalent. I mean, depression is also, but they oftentimes can go hand in hand as well. But I would
Sure.
say in the most immediately, it's more anxiety. Like what, I mean, there's so much uncertainty, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
anxiety about what this all means.
Yeah, that's true. I think as soon as we start hearing more when things may feel like they start to go back to normal, I think that will help a lot of people. So Michelle Carterman says, thank you for giving us permission to not be perfect as parents, but also acknowledging when we could have done better.
Yep.
Hi, Katie. She's watching as well. And Amy saying, Amy Barnes saying, thank you for all this great information and connecting us all together in this way. We appreciate a lot of you joining on here with
I
us.
know, I'm so
Live.
appreciative. Yeah, thank you so much.
And hi, John Gehring, old friend of mine from high school. And Emily Wilson, Emily Smith. Saw your maiden name on there, but hi, my daughter's teacher.
Oh.
So yay, yeah. Well, this is still live, so if you have any questions, and if you even have questions after the fact, or you come upon this afterward, feel free to put them in there. I'm sure we'll keep looking in here and can answer some questions for those of you even afterwards. So other than I guess we know the precautions, but what other precautions as a doctor would you advise for all of us? I know it started out with, let's just wash our hands, right? But now I think it's even, I'm not sure if we lost her. Washing our hands, or if it's, then it seemed to go more into the distance aspect. I think she may have dropped out at the moment. Let me see if we'll hold on here and see if she'll come back. In the meantime, if anybody else has a question. If she doesn't happen to come back for any particular reason, I just kind of want to let you all know that we will replay this. It'll be here on Facebook. And then also I'll be putting it up on my YouTube channel. So you can see the replay, scan through there, get many, many helpful tips that Dr. Nerissa Bauer was sharing with everyone. So, and that is on YouTube. You'll just do a search of Successful Women Made Here, and you'll find us. While you're there, please subscribe. I also have more than 60 videos up there of a lot of experts, entrepreneurs that have discussed various topics in there. Oh, good. So I think she's back. Let me just find it. Yay. Okay. Let me see.
There we
There we
go.
go. Got you back in there. Okay. So I was just letting everybody know while in the meantime that that they can watch this again on YouTube too. It'll be in the Facebook scroll, as well as they can go find this on YouTube afterward. So I guess any other parting tips that you have for anyone?
Yeah. So obviously, hand washing first and foremost, social distancing, remembering to stay at home, sending only one person out if you need to get groceries or gas for your car. Not everybody has to go on the field trip. I know it's tempting. It's so tempting after being, kind of locked up in your houses that the kids will want to go. But really, there's no need to have everybody go out. The only time that I would say everybody should go outside is if you're going to be able to go hiking or doing something active outside where you can kind of keep a reasonable distance away from other folks. There is no problem with that, as long as everybody maintains the 6 to 10 feet rule away from each other. But I think, also thinking about maybe wearing disposable gloves or bringing your winter gloves so that you can wash it after you go to the grocery, touching carts, things like that, having hand sanitizer with you. Right.
Yeah. Oh, I just thought that the other day too. Exactly. Because it's getting warmer now, but I thought, it's smart when we go to the store to just wear, like you said, winter gloves, something like that, throw them right in the washer when we get home. Because I was thinking about, everything we're picking up in the store, it could be living on there. So Emily Smith has a comment here. She said, unfortunately, her neighbor's husband is in the hospital with, I know, yeah, with the coronavirus. We're very sorry to hear that. She said he's in his upper 60s, And she says his wife and his daughter have been her 6-year-old's teacher. So they know the family, and she's fearful that he may not make it through, and it would be hard for her child to understand, what's happening. So she would like to know if there's any advice on breaking the news in case that happens, or for all those people who may have someone they know be touched by this. So our prayers, and I know you're praying for him as well, and our prayers that he is healed and gets through this. But there's, like you mentioned, I think even Dr. Nerissa earlier on, there may be at some point where we all, kind of like 9/11, we feel like, gosh, we will all end up knowing someone affected by this, who either got it or and then recovered, or maybe didn't make it through. So how do you go about discussing? I'm sure you've had patients, kids themselves even asking, or parents saying, how do I tell my children about when somebody does pass on?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously when we hear bad news or the possibility of bad news, before we go talk to them directly, I think making sure you do your own mindfulness check about how you're feeling, again, because how we communicate that news to our child can really amplify how they take that in, right? So if we're already unsettled about it, probably not the time to do it. But you want to keep them apprised of that, especially if it's someone they care for and they love. You can be honest and say, remember, this is why we're doing what we need to do. And unfortunately, I just found out that so-and-so is sick right now and not doing well. They're in the hospital. And you can keep it as simple as that, and then allowing them to do check-ins with their other family members, like doing a Zoom or a FaceTime call. Even doing get well cards, or doing a care package for that family and doing a drop off at the porch, right? Thinking of ways that what your family can do to support that family while keeping social distancing and following that protocol.
That's a great idea. I love that, what could we do if any little action, a card, a note, some little food item, something.
We all need that, right?
Yeah. And it probably helps the child feel like you tried, you did something, you're taking some kind of action, rather than
sitting back,
feeling like you're helpless or something.
Yeah. And then, I think just letting their questions guide how much more to tell them. And at this point in time, if the person is really ill and hospitalized, is intubated, we don't know if they're going to survive or if they're going to be able to get weaned off. I mean, so, allowing the child's questions to guide what and then it's okay to say, like, at this point in time, we're not sure what this means.
Right.
But we can continue to pray for that family and think of how we can support that family.
Yeah, and I think as you were talking about earlier too, about just being open and allowing them to express their feelings, no matter what it might be. It might be anger, right? It may be sadness. Sure. I know when some of this, just even school not happening, right? And starting to realize, okay, now these activities aren't going to happen. I mean, I had a lot of tears in my own household, and allowing them to just work their way through that, rather than saying like, oh, we need to be tough or get over this, right? To just maybe a lot of times just let those emotions happen.
Yeah.
So, hi, Melissa is here, and Lori, thanks for joining us as well. Emily says, thank you very much, Dr. Nerissa, for your advice. And Lorraine says she's sharing a funny story. She says every time she hugs her husband, she says, don't tell the governor. I don't know. Is that from one of those old TV shows? What's that from, Lorraine? I forget. Don't tell. Oh, I get it. Okay, you meant literally like you're not social distancing.
Distancing, okay. Right? It's okay.
Yeah, I think it's okay with family. Yeah.
But I think that's the other thing too, Sheryl. I want to point out is as we go on in this time, having that discussion with your partner or your significant other, like, what if one of us falls ill? What is the plan to keep everybody else in the house safe and healthy? So do you have an identified space in the house where that person can recover and be, still cared for, but separate
Mhm.
from everybody else who's not exhibiting any symptoms.
That's a
We
great
want to
point, to kind of
continue
have
to
a
do that.
plan, yeah, if
Mhm.
something that you don't get too caught off guard.
Yeah.
Or if they do go into the hospital, or even beyond the two of you, if it's a two-parent household, or especially if it's a single-parent household, what would be your plan if you
Yeah.
did have to go into the hospital? Who could step in right away and help out with your children?
Yeah. I mean, I personally know some families, friends, who both parents are positive and they still have young kids. It's terrifying. I mean, I think at this point in time, not being afraid to reach out for help, even if it's like a meal train that other friends or family can drop off or get groceries delivered to you,
Mhm.
but maintaining that social distancing. I think it's hard sometimes for people to ask for help, but there are going to be times that somebody is going to need that help.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we certainly hope all of you are being able to stay healthy, stay home,
Yes.
and getting some quality time with your family and drawing even closer together. So with that, like I said, you certainly can leave some comments in there below. We'll be checking this feed. Um, as I mentioned, if you'd like to watch this later on, it'll be on my Facebook, or also the Facebook. I just want to show you where that is too. So if you'd like to follow Successful Women Made Here, we're going to be doing more of these talks with other experts too. So if you'd like to like our page there at Successful Women Made Here, or it's even just actually Facebook and / Successful Women. And you can follow Nerissa's blog and get a lot more advice too. Oh, look at that. That was kind of cool how they did that. I'm still learning about this technology, but although it doesn't look like that, I think on the live right now. So let me hide this one, but there we go. So you can follow Nerissa's blog at Let's Talk Kids Health. And one last one. Again, if you want to also follow us on YouTube, just do a search of Successful Women Made Here, and I'll make sure that this video is there live too, in total replay, in case it gets hard to find on Facebook at some point. It'll be there. And many, many other videos too, with a lot of experts, more than 60 of them on the YouTube channel. So we thank you so much for joining us all here today on this, and thank you so much, Dr. Nerissa Bauer, for all your insight and your expertise, and sharing some knowledge with us on how to really talk to our kids about the times that we're in.
Well, thank you for having me. Stay well, everybody. Continue to practice social distancing, washing hands, and all of that. And don't hesitate to reach out, post comments or questions.
Okay, wonderful. Well, all righty. So I forgot about even doing this little look here. Thank you again for joining us. Until then, take care and be safe.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.